Special activist and storyteller, writer and community leader, Rabbi Amichai Lau-Lavie is the co-founding spiritual leader of the Lab Shul community in New York City and creator of the ritual theatre company Storahtelling, Inc. Amichai received his rabbinical ordination from the Jewish Theological Seminary of America in 2016, the 39th generation of rabbis in his family, the first one to be openly queer. Rabbi Amichai is the subject of Sabbath Queen, a documentary film directed by Sandi DuBowski that was 21 years in the making.
One day I was MC of some kind of event. I had one vodka too many, and she emerged out of my head like Athena.
My name is Storahtelling. Wonderful to be here tonight for this beautiful homosexualist event. I'm not homosexualist, of course, but I'm in favor of everything.
I've created this fictitious character.
I am a rabbin, which this means I am the widow or the wife of a rabbi. In this case, I am the widow of 6.
This Hungarian sex advisor, matchmaker, Kabbalist, and my father's nemesis.
This is a fairy tale, but it's from the Bible, so it is true. You understand?
One of the best ways to tap the sacred inside ourselves is through the joker, through humor, through winking at it. You can really touch the profound.
Well, Amichai's here. Hi, Amichai.
Hi, David.
Hi, Amichai. It's a real pleasure indeed to be speaking to both of you. And I was just saying to Sandy before you came on air that you must be the archetype of the busy man.
It is a busy season. These are the high holy days. What time is it where you are, David?
It's about 10:15 now in the morning.
Okay. Well, good morning.
So I'm bright and perky.
Right on. Okay, I'll take your energy.
All right, so let's get into it. Well, I'm talking today with Rabbi Amichai Lau-Lavie and the maker of the film Sabbath Queen, Sandi DuBowski or DuBowski. How do you pronounce it, Sandy?
Either way, yeah.
Okay. Either way, all right. And Sandy, your film Sabbath Queen was 21 years in the making, which suggests that you must have established a very close relationship with Amichai. Do you want to tell us what it's been like working together for all those years?
Well, when I met Amichai in the late 90s, I was in Jerusalem looking for people to be in Trembling Before God, which was a film that I had on ABC in Australia about Hasidic and Orthodox Jews that are lesbian or gay. Amichai, everyone kept saying he's a chief rabbi of Israel's gay nephew. So we met, but honestly, Trembling was really about the struggle to belong within Orthodoxy. And at that point, Amichai was on a different path. So, we became friends and, had years of friendship and years of developing trust. And then we began filming 5 years later in 2003 for this whole process of Sabbath Queen. And I don't think either of us knew back in 2003 that this would be an epic 2-decade plus journey of me witnessing Amichai's life and incredible work and his, unfolding into the leader that he has been for so many people.
Yeah, for a film that goes through a gestation period of some 20 years, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it, Sandy? One would have to say.
Yes, this is not just a marathon, it is an ultra marathon. But, I think it's because Amichai was always on a quest and always seeking and searching about how to serve, as a leader and as a rabbi, which, when we began filming, I did not know, I don't think any of us knew that he would begin the path to rabbinical school and to get smicha. And so I think that, there was a lot of twists and turns that we went on together.
So when you were making Trembling Before God, I think you made approaches to him then to participate in that film, but he didn't want to. I believe, from what I've read, that he wanted to have a film made just about himself.
I'll let Amichai answer that one.
First of all, I think Trembling Before God is one of the most important films that helped, break glass ceilings and open hearts and homes. My own family, my Orthodox family, my brother, my mother, all those years ago watched it, and I know it made huge impact on the world where I came from. So I think Sandi's work is not just about film, it's about the impact that stories have on people's lives. By the time we met, that was not my story, and I had left Orthodoxy. And so I was interested in fusions and integrations. And as I was doing my thing, becoming a storyteller, which is really, I think, the currency with which it is, I think that's the theory of change. Sandi became interested in my story. So it's ironic and delicious that all these years later, as a storyteller, I am someone else's story, and yet we're all in the service of the bigger story. So it's a never-ending story on some level.
And Sandy, I understand you had to wait 13 years to ask Amichai's brother, Rabbi Benny Lau, who's a celebrated Orthodox rabbi in Israel, to sit down for an interview, and he finally agreed. Why did it take that so long for that to happen? It's a key part of the film, isn't it?
I think that, I think Amichai and I approached Amichai's story with great sensitivity and great delicacy. I think that, Amichai is from a very public family, from quite a dynasty of rabbis, and who've been in the public eye. And I think that, when Amichai's brother made quite a bold, it was very beautiful of him to come to JTS, to come to this liberal seminary and support Amichai. Then it felt like that was the door that opened. That was when, Amichai's brother, Rabbi Benny, was really showing up. And I said, now is the time to ask him for a sit-down interview. Now remember that when I did Trembling Before God, I spent 6 years crisscrossing the globe trying to find any Orthodox Jewish parents who had a lesbian or gay child who would step forward and be interviewed. And after 6 years, I could find none. So I think it's really significant that Amichai's mother, his father, his Orthodox rabbi brother are in the film and are real role models for what it means to, really love your child. And really, even when there might be differences and disagreements, to really love with respect. I think I really applaud this family, who are, I think, role models for so many families across the world.
Yes. Amichai, you co-founded Lab Shul, which is an everybody-friendly, God-optional, artist-driven, pop-up experimental congregation, as it's been written. For your everyday observant Jew, like me, this sounds like a weird kind of community. What actually happens there? Can you give us an idea of how it operates?
Well, we just completed Yom Kippur, and we had 1,000 people with us in person in Tribeca, and I think another 1,000 online for 25 hours of prayers, music, storytelling, theater. We turned the Torah service into this interactive theater about what the story is about now, in this case, atonement and forgiveness. We take the classical liturgy and mix Ashkenazi and Sephardi, different modern liturgies, and really translate what we inherited into very usable currency for people who are perhaps ordinary, whatever that is, practicing Jews, but also the many people who are in relationships with us who might not be Jewish, or people on very different political stands, or people who are queer, straight, other, different ages, who want spirituality, want Judaism, but not necessarily want it as we inherited it, but in ways that speak to who we are today, which is a diverse set of needs. This comes from my own experience from growing up religious and coming out gay and figuring out there isn't room for me here. unless I start figuring out how to talk back to my tradition and reinterpret Bible and imagine prayer services as something where I and my friends can rejoice and not just read aloud. So we are lab and we are shul, and we keep experimenting with what it means to live out loud the Judaism of our values with a very different landscape that we're living in, obviously, and during this very difficult time, where what it means to be Jewish and what it means to stand with Israel and to stand with humanity and to deal with as much love and justice and compassion as we can while balancing these very different loyalties. Jews are hurting, people are hurting, the world is hurting. And Lab Shul, this past Yom Kippur, really leaned into the ways in which we can hold complexity and be in both and, including having Israeli and Palestinian speakers and bringing prayers from different parts of the world and inviting people to lean in and not just dial in.
A very simple question about Yom Kippur in particular. Do you advocate for people to fast, as is the one of the founding principles of Yom Kippur? Is that something you encourage?
Yeah. Sandy, you fasted, right?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah, no,
fasted
totally.
25-hour fast.
Oh yeah. We had a great break fast, and I traditionally break my fast on single malt with our board chair. It's a tradition. Um, a lot of what we do is we take the best in our tradition, the embodied practices, the liturgies, the values, the stories, and then we question. I use the metaphor, the well-worn metaphor of the baby and the bathwater. We like a lot of the baby. Some of the bathwater is from our patriarchal, trauma-based, old layers that need to be re-examined. Not every piece of the liturgy is hallowed in stone, and not every story we inherited needs to be passed on to the next generations as is. So that's what we do. It's the oral tradition, alive and well.
So coming back to the film, you do a number of impersonations of a drag queen with a Hungarian accent. Is this something you still pursue? These sort of I would call theatrical performances? Amichai, would you like to do one for us now, or is that something I can put upon you or not?
It's extremely expensive, David. I wouldn't trouble you. She has, in all effects, retired.
Okay.
As far as we know, she's busy in the Dead Sea, working for redemption. If she's back, she will let me know. But at the moment, if she does, it's exorbitant. So don't even think about it. She has been morphed into more lofty roles.
All right. That's
More lofty. Other roles.
something more important than
No, not in the least. I don't want to minimize in any ways. It was a very important part of my being and my ritual performance and my ability to put on a mask in order to sort of tell my story. And at some point, for me, the mask became less important. The story became important.
Yes, things change, and we have different priorities as life progresses.
Yes, aging and saging.
You received your rabbinical ordination from the conservative Jewish Theological Seminary of America in 2016, the 39th generation of rabbis in your family, the first one to be openly queer. How important was it for you to become a rabbi?
It's a good question. I think over time, from a storyteller and a teacher and an educator and a performer, I realized that there is merit in the title, that there's power in the current political communal structures that we live in. To be a rabbi gives one a voice, gives one some power, gives one some ability to be part of the change and the theory of change. And I felt that the lineage I come from certainly has very different rabbinic models, and I'm not eye to eye with some of my cousins who are also the 39th generation, who are either very ultra-Orthodox or very right-wing Orthodox. I found my own way. I call it flexidox. And yet the rabbinic is a responsibility that I take very seriously. And it enables me to be the voice for the type of moral and responsible Judaism that I'm hoping we can make louder and kinder in the world. So on both very professional levels of being able to do what I do in the world, and from very personal levels of my relationship to my family lineage, it was a good choice. And I'm very honored that the Jewish Theological Seminary accepted me and allowed me to graduate. We certainly have some ideological tensions. It was a very helpful education process for me.
Yeah, so you are now distanced from the Jewish Theological Seminary because of the fact that you've performed marriages between people of different faiths.
Yes.
So what are your views on intermarriage?
So when I graduated and serving my growing community, it was really clear that a very high percentage of people in my community, like other liberal Jewish communities, choose loved ones who are not necessarily Jewish and not necessarily becoming Jewish. And yet, many of those Jewish partners choose to be with people who are not Jewish and somehow create a Jewish home and be not in an either or Jew-Goy world, but in a world of fusions and hyphens, which is the world we're living in today, postmodern perhaps. And there are, of course, illustrious examples, and there's much concern in the Jewish world about that. My understanding was that when couples come to me and the Jewish partner wants Jewish in his life, and the partner who's not Jewish for different reasons does not become Jewish, there is still room for a Jewish home here. There's room for a Jewish ritual and for accepting and welcoming and figuring out these fusions with love. And so I came up with this concept based on a great deal of research into Jewish law and history, where we used to have, there is a standard that the rabbis created in the Roman times called Ger Toshav, which for all effects is a permanent resident in the Jewish community as opposed to a citizen. And there are some legal halachic permutations around that term, but it hasn't been really used extensively in this time. What I proposed is, and I wrote a proposal called the Joy Proposal, that instead of Jew or Goy, there is the Joy, who's both Jew and Goy, who is our many, many loving partners, friends, allies, and family members who are part of the Jewish community, even if not Jewish themselves. And if a couple comes to me and one is a Jew and the other is a self-professed Joy, then yes, I want to be there for them and welcome them in and invite them to imagine their Jewish plus journey, as opposed to saying no and watching them walk away from Judaism and not being able to be embraced by the complex but fluid reality we're in. Responding to people, to friends, to colleagues. Sandi, you can tell your own story. It came clear to me that I want to be an innovator in this field and help people be in a sphere that both honors Jewish tradition and Jewish law and meets us where we are, where 72% of American Jews who are non-Orthodox are choosing a partner who's not Jewish over a Jewish one. Those numbers speak. It's 60+% in other places. This is not instead of Judaism. This is the Judaism that is evolving and expanding and includes. Not everybody agrees with me. I think there are more and more rabbis who are finding creative options here. The conservative movement is grappling with it in a very noble and important way, honoring tradition and laws. Not everyone's on the same page. I chose to create the Joy Proposal to officiate such weddings, and so to not be affiliated with the rabbinic arm of conservative Judaism.
And you had to resign from the rabbinical assembly of the conservative movement as part of that endeavor.
Yeah, with deep respect and appreciation for, imagine that, few Jews with different opinions.
Yes, not unusual.
Not unusual.
Now, would you say, Amichai, that you come across as a kind of Jewish evangelist? Let me just elaborate my question. There have been attempts to reinvent Christianity necessarily, which involve reinterpreting the unique biblical message of salvation through this faith in Jesus Christ alone. And it's deemed to be undermining the gospel's distinctive character. And often it involves what's called syncretism, which combines Christianity with something else. Would you say that you're doing something similar from a Jewish perspective?
That was a lot. I don't know about evangelism. Syncretism for sure. I feel like, again, we're living in an age where we are learning from the Eastern traditions how to meditate and how to bring it to our Jewish meditative, contemplative traditions. And from Christian rock, we've learned how to bring music back into our worship, and from gospel churches, how to sing. So yeah, we're mixing, but we're also living in a world where our mythologies are so infused by the West. We're not living in insular ghettos. And so there are different narratives at play here. If there's anything where I'm connecting to what you're saying, it's this notion of the tent revival, where at different times in Christian and in other traditions, the sort of more folks, grassroots traditions pop up to meet people where they're at, to shake up some of the religions that get dusty. That's what happens to old things. Sometimes you need to shake it up. And we're in the middle of a paradigm shift. There's no question about it. In the Jewish world, in the Christian world, in the Muslim world, the digital age is changing everything we know about everything, AI, etc. There's no way the old religion can stay the way it was. I mean, obviously, my very ultra-Orthodox cousins would beg to differ, and I have full respect for their ways. But as a feminist, as a queer activist, as a peace activist, as a humanitarian, Judaism as it was cannot meet us where it is. It cannot be a place where only males are included in a minyan or get to lead a congregation. It does not include some of the homophobic and misogynistic and xenophobic and othering narratives we inherited. They just don't meet us where we are today and who we want to be. So we have to evolve. And the only question is how much, how fast, and what's the baby and what's the bathwater.
So following October the 7th, which is a very, very important event that has affected the Jewish community worldwide, we see many Jews who were ambivalent about their support for Israel change as they've realized that what Hamas inflicted upon Israel is totally unacceptable and must be condemned in the strongest possible terms. And this has led many Jews who had invested themselves in interfaith, like yourself, to become disillusioned as they have seen those with whom they had been bonding and associating to be condoning what Hamas has done. Has something similar happened to you, Amichai, or is your mission to be what you've been following? Is it undeterred despite what we're witnessing with this assault on 7 fronts upon Israel?
Well, the honest answer is both and. There's absolutely been difficulties in dialogues and communications and solidarities with friends in faith and friends across the world and friends in Israel and Palestinians and people of different stands and political stakes in the ground on this. And yet, I am undeterred because there are so many who refuse to resist our dialogue. And there are faith leaders and activists who come together hand in hand, including this past Yom Kippur, where we not only had a Palestinian and an Israeli peacemaking team. Both of them have lost family members, including on October 7th, to this conflict, who stand together and say peace is the only way, and this is how we're going to do it. And on Yom Kippur afternoon, every year we have an all-faith prayer where we invite imams, Christian ministers, Zen, Buddhist ministers, Hindu faith leaders to stand together with us on the Day of Atonement and to pray for peace and justice. And we did that again today with this past week with friends in faith, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Zen, to refuse to let the fundamentalists and the extremists dictate what our faith is about, what our religions are about, what the morality of our traditions is about, and to not let these messianic narratives distort who we are. So we're in a very serious crisis. Again, with the you can say that with the extreme evangelical vote here in the United States and its impact on politics, what's happening with fundamentalists like Hamas, and what's happening in the religious right in Israel, where extremist Jewish voices have taken over the narrative And Israel, where I'm back and forth nonstop, where my family and so many friends are, is in a serious crisis. It is not just the war crisis, it's the internal crisis of the Jewish narrative. So we have a lot of work to do. It's been an unbearably painful year for all of us.
Yes.
It's bringing up to the front very important questions that we cannot look away from and we must ask. And as part of this paradigm shift, it means challenging the narratives we've inherited and figuring out some new paths. I'll take us back to the film in a moment. The film, as you probably know, ends after October 7th. We've added a scene which was felt completely necessary. And as the film is now going around, and Sandi has been at screenings just today and last week, and we're going to have one later this week, it speaks to this moment of acknowledging the complexity of the moment and the both and narratives, and not stand with this or stand with that. The only future out of this mess is to stand together, which right now for many seems obscure at best. But I come out of this year ever more motivated to this work of hand in hand.
You're associated with the LGBTQI plus community, and you've been involved in gay pride marches. And I note that you wrote a piece that was published in the New York Times in June. The Pride March doesn't have a place for me. So you've been affected by what happened on October the 7th, where now you've been alienated by loud voices amongst activists in this community with their views on the Israel-Gaza war. You've pointed out that they're intolerant of nuance, complexity, and opposing views. So you've had to pull back from some of those with whom you've had a liaison.
Yeah, the point of the piece you mentioned was that while some of the public places might not be the containers for the nuance we need right now, we have other options at our disposal for how to come together. And this past Pride weekend, I didn't feel posters and flags and slogans were able to contain the nuance that I'm dealing with. But a private dinner party with some friends was. And people who don't all know each other and don't agree, but around a dinner table can have a really important conversation about values and purpose and what we do share, even if we disagree bitterly on other things, was the way to be proud and loud and loving and disagreeing together. So I think for all of us, we need to find the set and setting and the right context for how to have these important dialogues and face-to-face conversations, even when it's difficult and when it hurts. It's very easy to stay in our own camp, focusing just on our needs, but that's not what's going to get us moving forward.
So what do you make of this organization, Queers for Palestine? Are you sympathetic with them?
You know what? I'm not even sure who of my friends is engaged with of the different organizations out there. I know they've had some statements and some slogans that are very dramatic and have been named and quoted in different ways. I know many queers, I know many Palestinian activists, I know many people who are working for collective liberation. And I think what I care about, what I focus on, who I work with, are people for whom peace and justice and compassion and hope is at the forefront of liberation. And when it becomes violent and when it becomes hateful on a derogatory term that is very wide, whether it's anti-Semitic or homophobic, whether it's anti-Zionist or anti-Arab, then I stay away. I don't think such wide, broad strokes is what's helping us right now. I respect all activism, and yet I don't think all of it is helping us
legitimate.
quite frankly. I don't know about legitimate, but okay. I'm interested in healing. I'm interested in creating space for activism. I'm interested in dialogue. And we're at a moment where not all of that is possible all of the time.
Well, I'm hoping that this interview, when I bring it out to my listeners, will make them realize that this film, Sabbath Queen, is not just about a wackadoodle rabbi. That's about somebody who's got some real serious ideas that we should be considering. So I'm very grateful for you speaking with us today on my program, The Israel Connection, and Sandi, for you having directed this film, which I think is a great contribution to what people should be observing and seeing and understanding what is the nuance that is embedded within the message that Rabbi Amichai has been expressing to us now.
Mm-hmm. Well, David, thank you for such actually a very thoughtful and really considered and interview, where I'm really appreciating all of your very deep wrestling and questions that you've put forward as we've been speaking. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.